All right, let's dive in. Back in 2008, this mysterious person, or maybe group, called Satoshi Nakamoto drops a 9-page paper online. And it wasn't just about a new currency, no. It was a completely radical new way of thinking about money and trust itself. Today, we're going to unpack the genius behind Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, and we're going to do it slide by slide. So, the paper kicks off with a question that sounds super simple, but it's actually really deep. Every single time you buy something online, there's always a middleman, right? A bank, a credit card company, and they're always taking a cut, slowing things down. But why? Why do we actually need them? Why can't we just send digital money to each other, as easily as handing someone a $5 bill? This is the core problem that Satoshi was determined to solve. So here's the game plan for how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to look at this whole problem with trust. Then we'll build Satoshi's solution right from the ground up, starting with what even is a digital coin? Then we'll tackle the biggest hurdle it faces, and finally reveal the super elegant system of proof that makes the whole thing tick. And to wrap it up, we'll see exactly why this network is so secure. Okay, so first up, what exactly is this problem with trust? What are these inherent weaknesses that the paper talks about in our current financial world? This slide really lays it all out. On one side, you got physical cash. It's simple, it's direct. I give you $1, you have $1, the deal is done. But then you look at online payments, and for every single one, you need a bank, and that introduces all sorts of issues. Transactions can be reversed, which creates uncertainty, and of course, those middlemen, they charge fees. That makes really small payments totally impractical. It's this reliance on a central party that creates all this financial friction. Okay, so if we want to build a system without that trusted party, where do we even begin? Well, the very first piece of the puzzle is to figure out what a digital coin even is. The paper's first big idea is to define a coin simply as a chain of digital signatures. Think of it like the title to a car. Each time the car gets sold, the owner signs the title over to the next person. It's the same idea here. Each owner transfers the coin by digitally signing a hash, which is like a unique digital fingerprint of the last transaction, and then adding the next owner's public key. This creates this perfect, verifiable chain of ownership. But, and this is a huge but, this idea all by itself has a massive fatal flaw. And that brings us right to the heart of the matter. This is the one problem that just plagued every single attempt at digital cash before Bitcoin. And it's all about solving what's known as the double spending problem. So here's the crucial question, right? A person receiving a coin can check the chain of signatures. Sure, that's easy enough. But how do they know, really know, that the sender didn't just copy-paste that digital coin and send the exact same one to somebody else? Without a bank in the middle to check, how can you ever be sure you're the only new owner? For years, this was seen as a basically impossible problem to solve. And this is the core challenge right here. Digital stuff is just so easy to copy. If I have a digital coin, what's stopping me from sending one copy to Alice and another copy to Bob? Both of them would get a valid-looking chain of signatures, but I've just spent the same money twice. That is the double spending problem, and it's the entire reason we've always needed banks to keep a central record of who owns what.
So, how did Satoshi solve this seemingly impossible problem? Well, the breakthrough, and it's a huge one, was to replace all that trust with something much stronger: cryptographic proof.
The solution sounds simple, but it's absolutely revolutionary in how it works: a public ledger. Just imagine a giant global notary book that everyone on the planet can see. To stop double spending, every single transaction is publicly announced, and the entire network agrees on a single, shared history of the order they happened in. In this system, it's simple. The first transaction to be recorded is the one that counts. Any other attempts to spend that same coin later on, they're just flat out ignored. But, how does a network with nobody in charge agree on anything? Well, this is the really ingenious part. As you can see, it all starts with new transactions being broadcast out to everyone. All the computers in the network, which we call nodes, they gather these up into a block. And then the race is on. All these nodes start competing to solve a really difficult computational puzzle. The first one to crack it gets to add their block to the chain, and everyone else checks their work, says, yep, looks good, and then immediately starts competing to solve the puzzle for the next block. It's this constant collaborative process of building agreement. And that really difficult puzzle, that's the proof of work. You can think of it like a massive Sudoku that's incredibly hard to solve. But once you have the solution, it's super easy for everyone else to check that it's correct. This work is what makes the history secure and really expensive to try and change. But just as important, it creates a whole new kind of voting. Instead of one person, one vote, it's one CPU, one vote. And this was revolutionary because it solved a huge problem in decentralized systems where one person could just create a million fake identities to take control. Here, your influence is tied to real-world computing power, and the chain with the most power behind it, the longest chain, is what everyone agrees is the one true history. This all sounds great, but why would anyone actually dedicate their computer's processing power, their electricity, to solving these puzzles? I mean, what's in it for them? And that brings us to the genius of the network's incentives. The incentive couldn't be simpler. You get paid. The paper explains that the very first transaction in every new block is a special one that actually creates brand new coins out of thin air and awards them to the node that solved the puzzle. That, plus any transaction fees, is the reward. The paper uses this fantastic analogy. It's just like gold miners spending resources to pull new gold out of the ground and put it into circulation. This is where you see the brilliance isn't just in the cryptography, it's in the game theory. It makes it way more profitable to play by the rules and help secure the network than to try and attack it.
Okay, but this is the big security question, right? What if some really powerful attacker wanted to reverse a payment they made? Could they secretly build their own longer chain in private and then suddenly broadcast it to the network, tricking everyone into accepting their fake version of history?
Well, the paper actually calculates the odds. And as you can see from this table, they are just staggering. Even if an attacker had 10% of the entire network's power, which is a lot, if they're just one block behind, they only have about a 20% chance of catching up. But look how quickly that chance just plummets. After just a few more blocks get added by the honest network, the attacker's chance of rewriting history becomes practically zero. It's like every new block adds another deadbolt to the locks on the past, making it exponentially harder to change. So, when you put all these pieces together, you've got the chain of signatures, the public ledger, the proof of work, and the incentives. What do you end up with? Well, you have the complete system that Satoshi envisioned. The paper's conclusion just says it perfectly. We have proposed a system for electronic transactions without relying on trust. And that right there is the whole point. It's a complete, self-sustaining system where you just don't need to trust a central party anymore. That trust is simply replaced by the cold, hard certainty of cryptographic proof. And so, while this paper was all about electronic cash, its central idea, this new way to create a shared, unchangeable history without anyone in charge, it has implications that go way beyond just money. It really leaves us with this huge question to think about. What else can we build in a world where we no longer have to rely on trust, but we can rely on proof instead? Thanks for watching The Explainer.